Welcome to MindGlint, where psychological facts exist, and thanks for always sticking around. Today, in defense of noise, why mobilization often precedes competence. In defense of noise, why mobilization often precedes competence. A counter-argument to the tragicomedy of the cyberbot season. The critique of the cyberbot season is persuasive because it captures a real pathology of the digital age: a manufactured consensus, performative outrage, and applause mistaken for direction. Yet the critique risks collapsing two very different phenomena into one: manipulative noise and mobilizing noise. The danger is not that noise exists. The danger is forgetting why noise exists at all. In many systems, political, institutional, corporate, religious, competence does not fail because it whispers. It fails because it is structurally ignored. Noise, spectacle, and mass coordination have historically been the mechanisms by which ignored competence forces itself into view. 1. Attention is not truth, but it is power. Agenda-setting theory demonstrates that salience precedes evaluation. People and institutions do not decide what is true before they decide what matters. They decide what matters first, then debate truth within that frame. In this sense, noise is not an epistemic claim but a procedural demand. Competence without attention is inert. Attention without competence is volatile. But attention is the gate through which competence must pass. Quiet excellence may be morally appealing, but institutions rarely respond to virtue alone. They respond to invisibility, pressure, reputational risk, perceived urgency. Noise supplies those conditions. 2. What looks like manufactured consensus is often latent consensus surfacing. The spiral of silence explains why people with minority or unpopular views self-censor until they perceive social safety. Once visible support appears, participation can surge rapidly. This creates the illusion of sudden orchestration. Where did all these voices come from? This feels artificial. But threshold models of collective behavior predict exactly this pattern. Collective action often appears abrupt because participation thresholds collapse once early movers act. What looks like sock puppetry is sometimes simply people discovering they are not alone. 3. Outrage is not a replacement for competence, it is a catalyst. The original essay frames outrage and competence as opposites. Historically, they have functioned as phases, not rivals. Resource mobilization theory shows that movements succeed not because they are correct, but because they acquire resources, money, allies, media, legitimacy. Digital mobilization is often a resource acquisition strategy. Outrage opens doors competence cannot, accelerates stalled conversations, compresses bureaucratic timelines. Competence executes. Outrage mobilizes. The failure is not mobilization, it is failure to transition from mobilization to execution. 4. The quiet professional myth ignores power asymmetry. The romantic claim that competence simply works assumes a level playing field. In reality, expertise is filtered through hierarchy, credentials are selectively recognized, gatekeepers decide whose competence counts. Political process theory shows that movements succeed when they exploit openings, elite fractures, legal windows, crises, not when they wait patiently. For those outside power, noise is not vanity. It is often the only language power hears. Calling that noise performative can itself become a privileged critique, available only to those already listened to. 5. Collapse does not prove original illegitimacy. The cyberbot critique treats eventual burnout or disillusionment as proof that mobilization was hollow from the start. That conclusion does not follow. Informational cascade theory shows that cascades can be rational at the individual level and still collapse later. Failure reveals limits, not necessarily deception. Many mobilizations are not meant to govern indefinitely. Some exist to disrupt norms, force renegotiation, shift language, expose rot. The AIDS activism of Act UP, the #MeToo movement, and other historical cases demonstrate that disruptive visibility often precedes institutional reform, even when movements later fragment. A fire that burns out still produces heat. A movement that fades may still reshape reality. 6. The real lesson: noise without architecture is the risk. The most defensible critique is not that mobilization exists, but that mobilization without a path to competence is dangerous. Noise becomes pathology when leaders mistake momentum for mastery, applause substitutes for governance, outrage becomes identity rather than instrument. But that is a leadership failure, not an indictment of mobilization itself. Conclusion: beyond false binaries. You cannot tweet competence into existence. That much is true. But you also cannot whisper your way past entrenched power. Competence that refuses to mobilize remains virtuous and irrelevant. Mobilization that refuses to mature remains loud and fragile. The tragedy is not the cyberbot season. The tragedy is never learning how to leave it. Noise is not the enemy of truth. Noise is often the knock that forces the door open so that competence can finally walk through. References: McCombs, M. and Shaw, D. The agenda-setting function of mass media. Public Opinion Quarterly. Noel Newman, E. The Spiral of Silence. Journal of Communication. Granavetta, M. Threshold Models of Collective Behaviour. American Journal of Sociology. McCarthy, J. and Zold, M. Resource Mobilization and Social Movements. American Journal of Sociology. Tilley, C. From Mobilization to Revolution. Bichhandoni, S. Hirschleifer, D. and Welsh, I. A Theory of Fads, Fashion, Custom and Cultural Change. Journal of Political Economy. Reflect on noise as a tool for change. Do not forget to subscribe, share, comment and like. Thanks, Kingsley A. Mufua.